Four Faces, an iconic monument. On this day in history, October 4th, 1927, sculpting began in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Although it would take another 12 years from that initial chisel for George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt to be completed, the idea of Mount Rushmore was born. The idea for the monument to the great leaders of the United States originated from Doane Robinson, a South Dakota historian who sought ways to attract tourists to visit the state. However, when he proposed the idea of constructing such a large monument, there was strong opposition from the Lakota Sioux people, who to this day still consider the Black Hills to be sacred ground. Unfortunately, the Lakota Sioux people lost their battle to prevent the construction of Mount Rushmore, and the U.S. government took away the land from the Great Sioux Reservation from which it once stood. Gutzon Borglum was chosen as a sculptor to head the project, and the first face selected by the National Park Service was to be George Washington. Borglum first sculpted the head in an egg shape, as he would later carve the facial features. Next came Jefferson, who was initially meant to be positioned to the right of Washington. However, the face was severely cracked, so the sculpture had to be blasted off the mountain by the workers. Borglum then started over and placed Jefferson to the left of Washington, where he sits today. George Washington was completed in 1934, 7 years after the project had begun, with Jefferson falling behind 2 years later in 1936. Abraham Lincoln followed a year later, and Teddy Roosevelt was the last in 1939. The entire project cost around $1 million and was primarily funded by the federal government. Borglum's original plan was to continue working on the faces and eventually carve a series of inscriptions into the Black Hills outlining the history of the United States. He unfortunately died suddenly in 1941 at the age of 73 and was never able to complete his goals, but his son, Lincoln Borglum, was able to finish the work his father had started. Mount Rushmore, although deep in the Black Hills of South Dakota, receives about 2 million visitors each year, eager to see the faces of four of the greatest presidents who served the United States.